Hello and good afternoon. My name is Martin Coward. I'm a spiritual teacher, prosperity and mindset coach, working with gay, transgender, and bisexual men. And I am so excited today to have as my guest René Luisman. Did I pronounce your last name correctly? Luisman?
Almost Luisman, but you
Luisman.
did a good try.
Okay, great. Well, we'll get to that one second. But first, I just want to acknowledge the fact that we've been doing this broadcast live since the beginning of the pandemic in March of 2020. And we started this broadcast as a virtual sanctuary for us we all needed a place to go to get out of all the drama of the pandemic. It was just unbearable. When we have gone through probably one of the most difficult, challenging, painful years in the history of humankind, certainly in modern history. I mean, because of communication, we all felt it and experienced it. But guess what? We got through it. We're on the other side of it. And I don't know about you, but I know I'm feeling so much better about myself, the world, the people in it. I have such a greater appreciation for life itself, because I know we've turned a corner. We have moved out of that old scarcity thinking, not enough, painful way of being, into a world of love and prosperity and abundance. And that's what we're talking about now. Now that we've come through this pandemic, now that we're on the other side of this place, what do we do now? How do we build this new earth out of love, out of creativity, out of abundance, out of the truth of who we are, where we share our stories? We share our own stories of transformation. And so I'm dedicating this show for the month of May to celebrating extraordinary coaches and caregivers doing ordinary things that inspire us. And today, Rene who is from the Netherlands. And I met him a few weeks ago in a breakout session at the Gay Coaches Alliance virtual conference, and we had such a good time getting to know each other. I just connected. There was something about Rene that I just felt like immediate love and connection for. So much so that I said, you got to come on my show. You got to come on my show and share your story with the rest of the world. So enough for me. And also one more thing I want to ask you to do is, I can't tell who's here unless you write into the chat. So put into the comment section, just say, hello, I'm here. Tell us your name so that we know you're here. And if you have any questions or have any comments, you want to know anything, we want this to be as interactive as possible. Please speak up and say hello and let us know you're here and ask us. Don't worry. You can interrupt us. We'll stop and we'll listen. So Rene, thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad you're here. And I was telling him earlier, I had so much fun last night writing up his story that he shared with me, and I got to know him a little better. And I just can hardly wait to hear him speak and share some of his story with us today. So Rene, that's enough of me. It's time for you to hear. Let's hear from you. Okay. How did you get here? How did you get to where you are today? Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Martin. And thanks for having me on this show. When I just listened to your message, there's so much hope in it. And I know your Americans are a little bit further in this whole pandemic than we are here in the Netherlands. So it's so nice to hear this hope. And thanks for having me on this show, because I think it's very important to share stories and to connect with each other. But when you asked me the question to tell something about my story, I was thinking like, which story? There are so many stories a person makes. I mean, there are stories that other people tell about you. There are stories that you tell yourself. There are true stories. There's a little bit of fake stories. There are stories that are transforming during the time. And my background is I was communication advisor for 13 years within a big financial institute. And the story that I was telling myself at that moment was a story full of self-doubt. I was always thinking that there comes one moment that my boss would call me to his office and tells me like, listen, we gave it a good thought, but actually you're not fitting in. And I was thinking about this at many places of my life. I was not fitting in a group of friends. I was not fitting in professionally. I was not fitting in my family, in my relationship. These were all the limiting beliefs that I had in my head. So when you ask me to talk about my story, there are two big events that are part of my story. And that are also part of the reason why I became a professional trainer and coach nowadays. And I try gauge people to help to find their place in life. Because when I grew up, I was about 8 years old when I got into a terrible accident. I was 8 years old, and it was the afternoon that we should go on holiday with family. So my parents were preparing the caravan. We should go to the south of France, like every year, just with car, just go camping there. But in the late afternoon, we were trying to burn the ants in the garden. We were like, okay, we still have a couple of hours before we leave. So my dad was burning ants with kind of chemical stuff, like kind of lamp oil. So we, as small kids, me and my brother and my neighbor kids, some of the neighbor kids thought, well, we can do the same. So we tried to do it the same, few gardens further, and that went totally wrong. So the bottle of oil exploded. Everybody could jump backwards except for me. So I was 8 years old when I burned both of my legs, and I really had to learn how to walk again. And nowadays, I sometimes forget how much the impact is in my daily life, because honestly, I can do everything I want. I even walked the Camino de Santiago, 800 kilometers from France all the way to the west of Spain. So I'm not so much limited physically, but when it comes to what happens to the limiting beliefs that I had, I mean, what is the impact on a kid of 8 years old? And then the second life-changing event just happened a couple of years later. It's good to know I come from a family. I have two siblings. I'm the middle one. I have an older brother, a younger brother, a mom, a dad. And I grew up in a Christian family. And when I was about 11 years old, I found out that I'm attracted to boys. And what's the issue, you would say nowadays? But at that moment, there was nobody in my surrounding, in my environment, that could be like a role model. The internet was not there yet, so I couldn't Google it. I couldn't look it up. I lived in a small town in the Netherlands, and the only place I could go into is the library. Well, maybe you can imagine, but that's not the most exciting place if you want to discover yourself and your sexuality. But I had to start somewhere, so I tried to discover and try to understand what was going on, what this part of my identity was that I was doubting about. And on one hand, I read all the stories in the Bible of judgment. And on the other hand, I felt like there's nobody out there that's gay that I know. So where do these feelings come from? And in the upcoming years, I explored more and more about my identity. And there came a moment that I had to tell my parents. I believe I was 14 or 15 when my mom discovered that I was going out secretly every Saturday night without them knowing. And the next morning, Sunday morning, I woke up early and I went with them to church. So there was quite a big life, quite also a big challenge to keep this part of my life secretly. So somewhere in my 30s, I thought, life's okay. I mean, I was working for this big financial company. My boss was happy. I had a partner. I had a nice group of friends, but still something in my life felt like it was not okay. And I never realized that these two events that for me were like almost in a different life, that they had still such an impact on my life. I was so scared of showing myself to other people. I was so afraid of being rejected. And that was most of all because the way I was communicating with myself. And imagine I studied to be a communication advisor. I've learned 4 years about personal branding, marketing, communicating. But the thing that I never learned was to learn to communicate with myself in a constructive way. The way that I was communicating with myself was full of hate. I didn't like my body. I didn't like the way I communicated with other people. I didn't like what I was capable of. So I knew I had to change something about it. And what I know now is that it takes a lot of courage to dive into your own story and to reflect on what story are you telling yourself and to try to reframe this story and to try to see if this is the only story there is, or if there are different stories that you can tell yourself as well. And luckily, my boss asked me to improve my communication skills, my advising skills. And for me, that was an opportunity to ask him to follow an education as a trainer. And that study really helped me to transform myself. It really helped me to understand why I was communicating like this. And not in a strict way, not in a way like, okay, you're doing it totally wrong, you have to change it. But no, much more in a milder way to communicate in a soft, sensitive way to myself. And this morning when I woke up, I wrote I was reading the lines that you wrote about this session, and you said something about love your God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. But what if it's easier to love your neighbor than to love yourself? And that was the struggle that I had to face. I had to invest in a relationship with myself in order to move forward. And that's something I've learned through the years, through all the coaching and training techniques that I'm using nowadays. And that's also my mission for the gay community, because there's always so much attention for the coming out. And of course, that's an important moment in your life. But what does it mean if you have been hiding parts of yourself for many, many years? As soon as you have your coming out, there's time to celebrate and to go out and to be proud of who you are. But also there needs to be time to process, like, who are you and which parts of yourself did you develop to protect yourself, and which patterns did you develop during the way, and how can you get much more closer to yourself and to your unique self to celebrate all the parts that you find difficult to accept as well.
Yeah.
So
I love
that's
that.
one of the stories.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And the skill that I master and I use in my coaching is called shadow work. And people often ask me, well, what is shadow work? And I said, very simply, shadow is learning to love and accept those parts of ourselves we don't like. The shadow is that part of us that we hide, repress, and deny because we're ashamed of it. But it's our humanity. It's what makes us human. And what I would say is, from what you're telling me, is just spot on. And as we begin to love and accept those facets of ourselves, I think it's the word you often use, as we begin to love and accept and embrace that in ourselves, we also get to learn to love and accept it in other people.
Absolutely.
Because 99% of what we see is a projection from our own lens of the world. So if I'm looking at someone and I'm saying, I don't like that person because they're so controlling, what I'm really saying is, I don't like that part of me that's controlling.
And many times we want to get rid of that part. We feel like it's not okay to have this part. How can I get rid of it? How can I lose it? Because my life would be so much easier. Well,
exactly.
It's a way of getting rid of parts of yourself. Try to see the quality out of it and learn how to deal with it.
Absolutely.
So
because what's behind the shadow is the light. So if I'm needing to control something, it's usually because I'm trying to protect something. I'm scared I'm going to lose something or something bad's going to happen. So I'm trying to control the world because I don't have enough faith in the moment that the world's going to do better than I am, because things don't look the way my ego wants them to look. So I need to control the situation. Well, first of all, I know I can't control anything. Martin can't. So but this is the beauty of what I want to share with you, and why self-love is so important. Instead of blaming the darkness for being dark, instead of blaming the shadow for being shadow, that's its nature. It's its nature to be dark. It's its nature to be. Instead, love it. Shine a light on it, because behind the shadow, what is this going on? I'm doing it because I care about something, and I have a huge heart. So if you can, when you begin to love that part of yourself, when you begin to love that, even and say, wow, I don't like it when I show up as a controller. What's going on here? And And as I began to shine some light on that from my heart and love it, as you say, through self-love, and say, well, when can I be? I remember our previous president was a great example of that, of being able to. I mean, who would want to be him? I'm talking about somebody who was taking everybody's dark projections on one person in the world was him. But I can be manipulative. I can lie. I can do. There's nothing he didn't do that in some way I could do as well.
Yeah.
And so but for me and you who've done this kind of work, we've learned to realize and learn to love those parts, so we don't control, and we don't have a need to go out and live our lives that way. We can actually love those parts, and as we learn to love them, the behavior that's so offensive stops. So then I'm not out, you know what I'm saying? We love that part. We say, I don't need to be controlling the situation. I don't need to be controlling this show. I'm sitting here with this beautiful, loving man who is on the same mission that I am, and has to make a difference in the world. I don't need to control a thing. But I could, if I was like, if something triggered in me and scared me that you might say something or do something that I might try to start controlling the conversation a little bit, and then my shadow is stepping in. So so we said something about awareness, I think in your conversation. So we have to become aware of these behaviors and where they're coming from, so we can transcend them and look through them and actually embrace those things and love them, so that we quit showing up that way.
Yeah.
That's my thought on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many times, I mean, we have a judgment about parts of ourselves as well. Like you say, the shadow, we tell ourselves a story full of judgment about the parts of us that we're not liking. And much of my work is to take off this judgment and to see what's behind it, and see if we can change the perspective and tell a different story, and maybe come up with 3, 4, 5 different storylines and pick out which works best for us in order to achieve our goals in life.
Absolutely. That's the transformational experience, is to take a story that our shadow is making into a negative story. And maybe something happened, maybe something bad happened to us. And part of the idea of radical forgiveness is to go back and take that story where you're still blaming people and you're still a victim, and you're still, you could be so angry at the Christians for didn't accepting you. Or as you begin to unframe it, and you can unpack it and say, what was the lesson I learned? And as you're able to say, oh my God, I learned this valuable lesson about myself and the world through that painful situation, and I can actually through forgiveness, and begin to realize and reframe that negative story to realize, oh my God, I am so grateful for what was once appearing to be bad and terrible. I can be grateful for the chance to learn and grow and expand myself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it reminds me of the Persian poet, Rumi.
Rumi, yeah.
He has a quote, and I'm not sure if the translation is correct, but it's like, behind the judgment of good and wrong, right and wrong, there's an open field, and I want to meet you there. And for me, as a trainer and coach, that's what I want to do. But also to myself. I mean, if I judge myself and I'm aware of it, I try to see like, okay, what if I take off the judgment and look a little bit further? What do I find there? And like meditation is a good way, like we're doing by the end of this session as well. Like meditation is a good way of going through these levels of judgment and seeing what's behind it.
Beautiful. And that is, you just nailed it. That is the power of meditation. That is why we do it, is to get out, is a little mini hero's journey, which is the journey from our heads to our hearts. And so meditation is where we meet in your Rumi. Would you repeat that again? That was so beautiful. I could just feel that. You said that so beautifully. Would you say that one more time?
Behind the judgment of right and wrong, there's an open field. I want to meet you there.
Yeah, I want to meet you there. I want to meet you in that empty space of no judgment.
Yeah.
Of infinite love. That's what infinite love is, isn't it?
And if that's the way you can look at yourself like, okay, I'm not happy with this shadow part. I find it difficult that I'm sometimes can be too feminine or too strict or too, yeah, whatever it is. But if you can say like, hey, behind the judgment of right and wrong, there's an open field, and there's always an open field. And I want to meet myself there. And I think that's what self-love is all about, over and over again. It's not a kind of trick that you can do. It's not that people walk into my office, I let them do some tricks and they go out and they have self-love. No, it takes practice to invest in the relationship with yourself.
Yeah, I think I think once we become kind of have a epiphany moment and realize really what wonderful, loving men and women we are, human beings we are as human beings, then that would be kind of maybe a transformation. But then we have to sustain that. We have to learn. I know for me, when I was in my dark night of the soul, as you will, curled up on the sofa, thinking I was about to go back. Here I'd gone from being a highly successful wealth manager with a fancy office on Park Avenue. I still had the fancy office on Park Avenue, but all of a sudden I just was in so much fear that and the more fear I felt, the worse it got, and the more people didn't want to work with me, and it just fell down into the point where I was literally on the edge of bankruptcy. And I remember laying on my sofa and just feeling having a big old pity party, feeling so sorry for myself. And my spiritual teacher said, Martin, why don't you let that go? Why don't you practice a little contemplative prayer? And I won't go into too much. She says, why don't you just surrender all that to God? And it was hard to hear that. I mean, but what I did, I listened to her. She's a contemplative, and I've been on a pillow meditating for 25 years and 40 years practically. And I knew what she meant. I knew what she meant by that spiritual practice of surrender. So I did it. I did that. I did. Because I was so desperate. I was in so much pain. I created it myself. I don't know how I got here, but I knew it was bigger than me, and I had to have some help. But I needed something bigger than me to help me. So I literally just surrendered. And this may sound a little cheesy, but I'll tell you what happened. As soon as I really totally surrendered it, all those beliefs, all those judgments, all the things that I had to get done, this dissension of me, it was almost like a blanket of love and power and grace fell on me. And I had this real sense of, oh my God. And this voice came up in me and said, Martin, none of this stuff matters. None of these things matter. The only thing that matters, the only thing that matters, Martin, is that you show up in the moment with love and gratitude, and I will do the rest. I, meaning I, the divine within you. And that's when I really got clear about my authentic self. And I call her Joy the Wise Woman, by the way. Her name is Joy, my divine feminine, my caretaker is Joy the Wise Woman. And it's taken me a few years to get into that and get to know her and know how to integrate that wisdom that came into me that day. But this is how I got here. That was the moment that made the shift for me, that letting go, that surrender.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of courage, because a lot of time people give you the advice, even if you don't ask for it, oh, just let it go. But how? I mean, you're not going to sit there and let things go. You have your responsibilities, and sometimes you don't even know which buttons you need to press to let go. So like you just said, it's a process, and it's all the time like going back to the here and now and letting these emotions, allow these emotions to flow. And sometimes, I mean, I've been experiencing like healing journeys as well, which is a technique to go deeper and deeper in these layers all the time. And there's not so much you have to do. You just have to sit there and allow the emotions to go. And one comes and it goes again, and another one shows up, and you will feel the emotions and the feelings through your body. And sometimes it's overwhelming, and sometimes it's calm and peaceful. But in the end, there's just this source of energy that helps you to overcome difficult situations.
Yeah. We were speaking of Rumi earlier, and probably one of my favorite poems is The Guest House of his. Yeah. Where he talks about, about welcoming all these various emotions, this malice, the meanness, the depression, the joy. Welcome them all as guests in your home, because behind it is probably some marvelous, and it is true. It's one of my favorite poems of all time, because, when you're in that moment, when you're in that depression, when you're in that darkness, it is scary. And that's why I have coaches. I'm sure you do too. That's why we need guides.
Yeah, and the first reaction is to fight against them. I mean, I'm a very welcoming person. Everybody's always welcome to have dinner, to come over for drinks and stuff like that. But as soon as anger comes in, or jealousy, or whatever bad emotion, I want to kick them out.
Yeah.
So that's a big battle. So I love that. I love that poet as well. Yeah, it's. Yeah.
It's absolutely good. So I want to ask you a question here. We've got about 5 more minutes. I want to ask you, it's one of my favorite questions, and it's this. I call the pandemic the big timeout. It was like Mother Nature said, "Okay, people, I create this wonderful, abundant universe. I make these wonderful, major creatures called, and I give you all my power, and all you've done so far is complain and try to destroy it. So all of you are going to go to your room and you're going to be quiet until you're ready to come out and be grateful for what you got." And I got to tell you, I learned a lot about myself. I really learned some wonderful things about me. But I don't want to talk about what I want. I want to know what wonderful things you learned about Rene in the last year. What are some wonderful things you learned about you that you may not have ever learned had we not gone through that great big timeout?
Mm-hmm. Well, it has been a year. It has been a roller coaster as well. And I mean, I've been going through different phases. And in the beginning, I was like, I want to help. I want to support. We're in this together. So I've been volunteering in the hospital. I've been calling all my clients, like from the past, like, if there's something I can help you with, just reach out. You don't even have to pay. We're in this together. We have to support each other. But I think I forgot myself in this. I forgot that I do have needs as well. And business-wise, it has been challenging. I'm still there. I'm still standing strong, but it has been challenging. So if there's one thing I've learned, is that it's so easy to just reach out to 1 or 2 people in your surrounding and ask, like, hey, how are you? Is there something I can do for you? And I really try to, ask for help to the people around me. Also share what is busy in my mind, what is going on, and also, try to find this connection. And instead of, I was always traveling all over the country. Every weekend I was on the road, and nowadays my world is just small, and the time that I spend with people, I try to make like quality time, and also to really see how we can support this, because we're in this together.
Yeah, I love that, because what I'm hearing, this is a story I'm going to make up. What I'm hearing is you realize really how precious my life is and how precious your life is. And we're in this together to love and support each other. And in the short time that we're on this planet together, it's just too precious. The only way out and through and to make the best of it is to love and support, give and receive love.
Yeah, and everybody's experienced this in a different way. I mean, if you're having a family with kids and you have to teach them at home, and you still have to do your job, and you have to be a loving parent and loving partner, it's difficult. But even if you're single or living on your own, everybody has their own challenges. And and that's what I just want to say to the people who are watching as well. Just reach out to somebody and just ask them how they are. That's all you have to do.
You know, I did something a few weeks ago. I get up in the morning and start my day with a kind of I get my coffee and I sit out here on my lovely porch, and I face east and I watch the sun come up, and I don't pick up my phone. I don't engage. I just allow my heart to wake up with the world. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I'll start, things will come to me, and I decided, Martin, just text some people that you know, and ask them, say, hey, is there anything you need? Is there anything? I'm just checking in to see if there's anything you need. And I had more fun with that. I had more fun. And some people were like, what? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm saying, okay, I'm just checking in. And some people ignored it. And some people gave me the privilege of saying, yeah, I can need some help with something. I said, really? Let me see how I can help you with that.
Yeah.
And, you know, it really gave me a chance to, and because I really meant it. I wasn't just putting it out there to just put it out there. There was something about that came up in my meditation that morning. I said, Martin, just reach out to the world on your phone and see if there's anything that people you know could use some help with.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And, you know, I know when I'm doing something that's good, that's right, because there's a difference between being kind and being nice. And I'll explain that to you. When I'm nice, it's a little bit of a quid pro quo. Like, I'll give you an example. I was so nice to her, and she still didn't invite me to her party. And then I might have an ugly name for her. Because that was me being nice because I wanted something back. I had to wait. But when I'm being kind, I get to feel the kindness in the doing of it. So just putting the text out, I got to experience a transformational shift in me just by writing the text. It didn't matter to me whether they came back or they didn't come back. I felt a sense of love and contribution just by making the offer. That's the difference between kindness and niceness.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I totally agree. Yeah.
And guess what? I told you this was going to go by quickly. It's already half the hour.
It's going fast.
We're going to do a 20-minute medication. It could be medication too. It might be spiritual medication, but we're going to do a little meditation here. So I'm going to invite you to be my meditation student, and let me guide you on a 20-minute form of meditation I call centering prayer. And it's a form of prayer introduced about 40 years ago by a brother named Father Richard Keating. And it's a way of letting go. What you said a while ago, it's a way of letting go of our thoughts and our beliefs in our heads and surrendering them into our heart space. So we're going to go into a little heart space together. So you can leave your eyes open, you can leave your eyes closed. Just sit up tall like a proud human being. Is a proud human being, you know, proud of this beautiful body and this opportunity, this precious life, and just sit in a posture of being grateful and proud to be here in this moment together. And then begin to just allow yourself to breathe. Just to go from being out there to in here. Allow yourself to just begin to focus the mind on your breath. And just start with just the natural rhythm of your breath coming in and going out. Notice the rib cage is expanding and contracting. Begin to notice how the belly will sometimes is actually the muscles are pulling the breath in and helping. You don't even know it, but the belly muscles are actually part of the process of putting air in and letting air go. And when you meditate, you can't stop thinking, and you don't really want to, because then you wouldn't be alive. But you can slow it down a little bit and get some space between the thoughts. And a little technique that I'm going to teach you is a little reverse engineering. When we think, our tongues vibrate. So if we can slow down the vibration of the tongue consciously, we can slow down the thoughts in our head. And the way I like to do this is to take the tip of your tongue and gently rest it on the roof of your mouth, just behind your front teeth, so it's kind of natural. Slightly part your lips and relax your jaw and just breathe. And as you're breathing in and out through the mouth and the tongue, become conscious of the breath gently massaging the tongue as it flows over the tongue in and out. And just bring your consciousness to the mind awareness, to breathing and relaxing the tongue. You have nothing else you have to do. You just have to be still and breathe and relax the tongue. And just do that for a few minutes and just see what that feels like. As you allow yourself to get still and just breathe. Just be still and breathe. And as you're breathing naturally, allow the belly muscles, just become aware of how they're expanding and contracting to pull the breath deeper into your belly as an anchor of spirit to hold you in the chair. And just notice it. And as thoughts come up, which they do, allow the breath to grab that thought and pull it down into the belly. And on the out breath, just let it go. Just like emotions, thoughts come and go like clouds. And the idea of meditation is to not get attached. And when you find yourself attached to a thought, to just let it go. Over and over and over again. And to create a little more space, we're going to do 3 big belly breaths. 1 second. Set the bell now. So with the belly muscles and your tongue resting gently against the roof of your mouth and your mouth slightly parted, and just begin again to breathe, becoming conscious of your belly, the muscles in your belly and the work that it's doing. Allow the belly to pull in and just pull in the breath through the mouth, through the nose, deep into the belly, and just hold it. Ready? Hold it, create some space. Now let it go. And as you release the breath with intention, let go of every thought, every belief, every opinion, every judgment, every story, every worry. Just let them go. That's what we mean by letting go of all that noise in our head. And just allow that bell to pull us deeper into ourselves and out of our heads and into the heart. Just imagining the heart opening every time you breathe to take in more air, more love, more joy, more gratitude. And we're going to do another big belly breath. We're going to bring the breath in through the mouth and the tongue and the nose. We're going to bring it across the tongue. We're going to expand the heart area and pull that breath deep into the belly and hold it just to almost discomfort and let it go. You ready? Pull it in. Hold it. Hold it and hold it to almost a little bit of discomfort, because you, like you do when you hold on to too much stuff in your head. Let it go. Just let it go. And let go of any remaining beliefs and opinions about which you are ashamed or which you believe is good or bad, and allow yourself to fall into that empty space between. Allow us all to meet in that empty space, infinite empty space between good and bad and right and wrong. And we're going to do one more belly breath, and then I'm going to be quiet for the rest of the meditation, except for the interval bells, which you're going to hear from time to time. And the purpose of those bells is to wake us up. Is to wake us up from our sleeping, our thinking, our planning, our worrying, or whatever our mind is attached to, as an opportunity to reset and fall back into that empty space between right and wrong. So here we go. Let's get a lot of air in so we can create a lot of empty space, okay? So pull it in through the mouth and the nose, cross the tongue, open up the heart, pull it deep into the belly, really expand the belly, expand it all, create tons of empty space. Hold it and let it go. And let go of all those thoughts of right and wrong, good and bad. Hold on to nothing. And just know the truth. Be still and know that I am God. There's the sweet sound of that wake-up bell to wake us up from our thinking, our sleeping, our planning, our worrying. And the invitation is just to acknowledge it, thank that brilliant brain for all it's working, and just let it go. Just let it go and gently fall back into that empty space, that empty field of infinite love. There again is that sweet wake-up bell to catch us out, to bring us out of that rabbit hole of thought and plotting and planning, story, worry, maybe even sleeping. And the invitation is just to smile, that brilliant brain of yours for all its work, and just let it go. And again, fall back into that big, infinite, spacious field of infinite, unconditional love. And there's our final bell. Come on back to join us, Renee. How you feeling? Did you find that infinite field we love to be in sometimes and dance in?
Yeah, it's so nice to have these moments for yourself. And I also realize how easy it is to drift away in all your thoughts. So the bell really helps me to go back to my center. And I'm a thinker and I'm always in my head. I'm always having this dialogue with myself. So I need these moments in my in my daily life to get connected and stay connected with my body. And not only trust the information and the stories in my head, but also respect and listen to the body, to the stories that the body is telling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the body tells us our stories through our emotions, because we hold those emotions in our bodies. So something I want to go back to earlier, when we're feeling those negative emotions that we want to resist and want to push away. And you said earlier, instead of pushing them away, if we can accept them and hold them and sit in them and feel them, that we can learn something. We can go deeper inside ourselves.
Mm.
And I know that to be true. When we go in, we can find at the bottom of that emotion is a deeper truth that we're loved.
It is. And it's also a matter of changing this perspective. So many times we fight and we just think about what we want to avoid. But if you're aware of that and you're able to change the perspective, and I mean, you can, because there's always a second storyline that you can put next to the original storyline or your current storyline. And don't think about what you want to avoid, but think about what you want to achieve. And that directly gives a different sensation in the body and a different energy.
Thank you for that. It's a wonderful tip. I couldn't agree more. That's a beautiful tip. Just if you're just feeling something, just allow yourself to feel it, and you'll soon find. And if you begin to feel, it may sound weird. Let's just say you're feeling the one we all hate, particularly as men, is that feeling of shame. But when you're feeling shame, you're feeling shame. I mean, that's just what you're feeling in the moment. And mine, from what we're both saying, is just, okay, I'm feeling shame right now. And if I'm feeling shame, maybe now is not the best time for me to call a new client or make a call. Maybe the time is me to go just sit in nature and feel that shame and just see what's going on inside of me and see what's underneath that shame and or anger or whatever that is. Because for me, sometimes those negative emotions are not the time when I want to go out and engage with other people, because I might project that onto them. So so being emotionally intelligent is to be emotionally intelligent with ourselves, so that we know when we might want to shift the next best thing.
And shame can be a very powerful, strong, overwhelming emotion. And
yes,
I think especially for gay men, we are so familiar with shame, but many times it's shame based on an old story, the story of our inner child, where we've been hurt or when it was important to survive in order to not be rejected from your parents, your culture, wherever you come from. And it takes courage to show yourself.
Yes, it does. It takes courage to show. It takes courage to ever get out of that feelings of self-worth and self-doubt. And the one thing it struck me a lot when I was working with your story last night was that, yes, we all have to do our own work, but we certainly aren't meant to do it alone.
Yeah.
We need each other. I need you and you need me, and we need each other. And that was the premise behind me even creating this sanctuary back in the beginning. I had no idea what I was doing, by the way, back in March. I'd never done a live Facebook Live before.
And I thought, at you now.
And talk about feeling vulnerable. I was going to bring my whole meditation practice to the world stage, So, you wouldn't believe the fear in my head with all that kind of nonsense.
When I started my business, I was terrified. I didn't even believe that I could survive half a year. And what I did is I reached out to 4 or 5 people and I asked them, do you believe in me? And do you want to support me? And they said, yeah, of course we believe in you and we want to support you. What can we do? And I said, just believe in me. Just let me know that you're behind me. If I have a moment of doubt, that I can fall back and that I know that there are 4 or 5 people behind me that believe in me. And that gave so much support to go on.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. That is beautiful. Thank you. That's great advice for almost anybody listening right now. If you're about to take on something new that you're just not quite sure about, you have some self-doubt, find 3 or 4 people that you can trust, that you can be vulnerable and tell them the truth and say, I'm doing something. I'm a little scary about this. Can you believe in me when I'm afraid I can't, when I'm not able to believe in myself?
Yeah. And you help them as well, because you inspire them. You show them your courage and your vulnerability. And that brings a deeper connection between people.
Yeah. Yes, it does. So I can't believe we're almost at the end of this hour. But I do want to give you an opportunity, because you're such a beautiful, loving, I can't imagine anything more delightful than to have you as my coach. And so I imagine there may be people who are listening either now or listening to the replay that would love to get in touch with you. I know you have a Facebook page with your name, and that's always a really quick reminder. But other than your Facebook, so why don't you just tell people what's the best way for people to reach out to you, the simplest one, the easiest for them to remember, so that they can find you and get in touch with you and find out more about how you can have a relationship with you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, whenever you have a question, whenever you want to talk about this subject or want to know more about what I'm doing or share your thoughts about this, just reach out. My website's gaymancoaching.nl. There's an English section in the upper right corner. There's a free online magazine that you can download about authenticity, and there's lots of information about my story, who I am, what I do, and yeah, whatever you want to share, feel free to send me a message, because that's something I always said. I want to be approachable to everybody.
I'm going to encourage people to reach out to him, because I'll tell you, after the virtual conference where we met, that's why he's here. I reached out to him and I just said, I just wanted to get to know him. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad I did, because here we are today, and I feel like I've made a new friend and in the world that I'm just great, who's going to have my back.
Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for the support, Martin. I really love what you're doing here, and there's so much hope, and there's so much positivity in it, and I really love it.
Thank you for saying that. I do. I really appreciate that. I love that. Thank you. Hold on one second. I'm going to close this out, and we're going to meet backstage for just a second. But I just want to let everybody know about a couple things coming up. One, I have a Facebook group called Financial Heart Space for Gay, Transgender, and Bisexual Men. And that group is specifically for our tribe to deal with our specific wounds. We have our own woundedness. And so that's a safe space for us to work. And I have another Facebook group called the Financial Mystic Sanctuary, and that's for everybody. So I just want to make sure that if you're gay or bi or transgender male, please join us in there. We do all sorts of cool work, things, fun, and workshops. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to let you know about, I'm going to give you a little hint. On June the 7th, mark your calendar, I'm going to be giving away a free 5-day workshop, a less than an hour a day for 5 days to transform those feelings of self-doubt and insecurity into the love and abundance of the truth of who you are. And the intention of those 5 days is to, in those short 5 days, is to take you on a real hero's journey and create a transformational experience. So at the end of that, you're going to know exactly who you are, why you're here, and how important it is for you to get out there and do your thing, and how lucrative it can be. When you're doing what you love to do, it's fun to make money. That's coming from a prosperity coach. It's just a lot more fun to make money by making a contribution and adding value. People are asking, how do you decide how much you're going to charge as a coach? You charge as much as the value you give. And the only person that knows that is me, the coach, and Rene, the coach. So I've got but that program is free. So, and it's valuable, and you're going to get something from it. And so tuned for that. It's going to be on June the 7th. And in the meantime, have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday, and may love and prosperity prevail. Thank you for joining me today.